Muy buenos días. Muy buenos días a todos. Aquí su anfitriona virtual sin cámara, lamentablemente. Mi nombre es Beatriz Gilo, soy urbanista, directora de la empresa de asesoría inmobiliaria Corporate Real Estate Advisory, afiliada a la firma internacional Sobre, Inc. Y tengo el placer de darles hoy la bienvenida como tesorera del Consejo Venezolano de Construcción Sostenible a este webinar, el tercero de una serie de 5 conferencias que hemos tenido en esta semana, denominada la Semana de Construcción Resiliente o de Construir Resiliencia para el Clima, la Gente y las Economías. El World Green Building Council, al cual nuestro consejo está afiliado como representante de Venezuela, ha instituido la celebración anual de una semana en la cual mundialmente se desarrollan conferencias y eventos orientados hacia el tema específico seleccionado para cada año. Como lo hemos comentado en los 2 eventos previos de esta semana, esta es la primera vez que participamos como consejo y consideramos que es una oportunidad de oro para compartir iniciativas tendentes a abordar con resiliencia los retos que vivimos cada día en Venezuela desde hace años, que se han potenciado por la pandemia del COVID-19 y el cambio climático. Hoy nos sentimos honrados de contar con la participación de la Embajada Británica en Caracas a través de su encargada de negocios en Venezuela, la señora Becks Buckingham, quien nos va a presentar información importantísima como es la Cumbre Climática COP26 y las perspectivas y acciones de la Presidencia del Reino Unido para estimular a su industria al cumplimiento de los objetivos del milenio respecto al cambio climático. La COP26, importante reunión de las partes, alineadas para atender el tema del cambio climático a través del seguimiento al cumplimiento de los objetivos marco de la Organización de las Naciones Unidas, establecidos para ir revirtiendo justamente el proceso de deterioro que se está experimentando en nuestro planeta, tendrá lugar este año en noviembre en Glasgow, y el anfitrión será el Reino Unido. Nuestra ponente del día de hoy, la señora Buckingham, tiene una extensa e impecable trayectoria diplomática desde 1990 hasta la fecha, la cual nos permitimos resumir desde el 2015, indicando que se ha desempeñado como jefe adjunta de la Unidad de Estabilización del Reino Unido del 2013 al 2015, como directora adjunta de país en Afganistán desde el 2015 al 2017 y en Sudán del Sur desde el 2017 al 2019, como directora adjunta en Política Exterior y de Seguridad del 2019 al 2020, como directora del proyecto DEFEND y de la Dirección de Estrategia Global del 2020 al 2021, y llegó hace 2 meses a nuestro país para desempeñarse como encargada de negocios de la Embajada Británica en Caracas. No quiero quitar más tiempo de la ponencia a la señora Buckingham, pero antes de darle la palabra para su exposición de hoy, les reitero a todos la importancia de mantener sus micrófonos cerrados para que todos oigamos mejor y hacer, por favor, sus preguntas por el chat con sus correos electrónicos para tratar de contestarlas al final de la ponencia o con posterioridad vía correo electrónico. Sin más, les dejo con la señora Buckingham hoy. Welcome.
Oh, muchísimas gracias para la introducción. Es muy amable. I'm going to ask now, Nolan will share the screen for me. So today I wanted to talk to you about COP26, what COP26 is, what the challenges are that we face, what our ambition is, and why we need to get it right. So what is COP? It is a classic UN abbreviation, the Conference of the Parties. It is the decision-making body of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, which entered into force in 1997. For over 30 years, COP has pretty much met every year, and the presidency is rotated amongst countries from the region. This year, it is the UK who will host COP26 in Glasgow. And then we will be president for the following year. So we will host the conference from the 31st of October, the end of this month, next month. And we will have world leaders, climate experts, businesses and campaigners from over 190 countries. You will all have seen the concern about climate change, and there is a particular sense of urgency. Coming 5 years after the landmark Paris Agreement, Glasgow is the moment when all countries are expected to update reduction, often called NECs, and deliver on their commitment to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. So we face important challenges as we meet in Glasgow. COVID-19 is still very much alive and in the world, and we owe it to future generations to base our recovery on solid foundations, including a greener, more resilient and inclusive global economy. We have an ambition gap, ambition on mitigation. Despite the recent progress, NDCs still fall far short of the Paris Agreement and the temperature goal. Our ambition on finance. Developed countries need to deliver and surpass the 100 billion goal of climate finance. And we have an ambition gap on adaptation. Climate change is happening now. We can't wait. We need to be more devoted to helping communities adapt and be resilient in the face of climate change. We also should not forget the weight of public expectation. The world is watching, and all of us have to get it right. So what are the 4 goals of COP26? The first is mitigation. This is about securing global net zero and keeping 1.5 degrees within reach. It's about scaling up to close the gap and deliver the emissions target set in the Paris Agreement. Current commitments, if implemented, would lead to a catastrophic temperature rise of 2.7 degrees by the end of the century. Many of us on this call won't be alive, but our children, our grandchildren, our nieces, our nephews, they will be. We have to take urgent action and ensure our recovery plans post-COVID are aligned with the emission plans. Goal 2 is adaptation. This is about adapting to protect communities and natural habitats. We need to recognize that climate change is here now, hasn't gone away, and we have to respond to its effects as well as building resilience. That's the central theme of World Green Building Week. But we need innovation, tools, expertise, and a step change in the finance for adaptation and resilience building, particularly in the most vulnerable countries. We have to mobilize finance. We have to make good on the $100 billion annual climate finance goal that was affirmed in Paris. We need to be in a position to unleash the trillions in private and public finance to meet global net zero. Collaboration 26. We need to work together to accelerate action, close off the outstanding elements of the Paris rulebook, and accelerate delivery of the Paris goals through collaboration between governments, businesses, and civil society. We cannot go it alone. So why does this matter? Why does this matter to the construction sector? Next slide, please. Perfect. Buildings and construction account for 38% of global energy CO2 emissions in 2019, reaching their highest level ever recorded. Electricity consumption in buildings represents nearly 55% of global electricity consumption. Each degree of warming adds a significant stress to global transportation, energy, housing, and other essential infrastructure, leading to progressively worse damage. So what this means is construction can deliver transformational change as a significant consumer of electricity and materials. It could also become an important source of green jobs and innovation for decarbonizing the world economy. According to the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, collaboration is crucial for success. But it's not just about governments. It's really important we recognize that delivering a successful COP and unlocking the opportunities of a zero carbon economy doesn't require just governments. Climate change has the greatest impact on the most vulnerable sections of society. Businesses, cities, regions, indigenous people, young people, universities, and wider civil society have to work together. And that is why we are taking an all-of-society approach to COP26 to deliver an inclusive summit. The UK will use its COP26 presidency to amplify the voices of those most impacted by climate change, to deliver a truly all-of-society and inclusive COP that ensures no one gets left behind. We are encouraging all stakeholders to set net zero targets by 2050 at the latest. If they can do it earlier, the better. Remember, every degree counts. We are also inviting stakeholders, businesses, regions, cities, civil society to join the race to resilience. This aims to build the resilience of up to 4 billion people most vulnerable to climate change by 2030. The race to resilience aims to deliver a step change in global ambition for climate resilience and adaptation, and putting people and nature first. You can sign up to this on our newsletter. The link is attached in the presentation. Race to Zero. It is a global campaign to rally leadership and support from businesses, cities, regions, and investors for a healthy, resilient, zero carbon recovery that prevents future threats, creates decent jobs, and unlocks inclusive, sustainable growth. Led by the UN high-level climate champions for climate action, Nigel Topping and Gonzalo Munoz, Race to Zero mobilizes actors outside of national governments to join the Climate Ambition Alliance, which was launched at the UNSG's Climate Action Summit 2019 by the President of Chile, Sebastián Piñera. The objective is to build momentum around the shift to a decarbonized economy ahead of COP26. This will send governments a resounding signal that businesses, cities, regions, universities, and investors are united in meeting goals and creating a more inclusive and resilient economy. A sister campaign, the Race to Resilience, has also been launched to mobilize businesses, investors, cities, and civil society to strengthen the resilience of 4 billion people in vulnerable communities by 2030. That is only 9 years away, 2030.
El sector de la construcción puede tomar acción ahora, sumándose a Race to Zero, la campaña global apoyada por las Naciones Unidas que nos permite hoy movilizar el liderazgo hacia y más allá de la COP26 en Glasgow. Race to Zero nos permite mostrar cuáles son aquellos negocios más innovadores y ambiciosos en materia climática que se han comprometido a reducir a la mitad sus emisiones al 2030 y alcanzar las 0 emisiones netas al año 2050 como muy, muy tarde.
It is our responsibility that by 2050, at the very latest, all new and existing projects must be net zero carbon across their whole life cycle. Construction companies in the race to zero are critical enablers of our sector's net zero transition. These are the businesses at the forefront of some of the world's most exciting and creative projects, sharing a resounding ambition signal to the industry and policymakers on taking collective action now towards achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement.
Since joining the Race to Zero, our climate action efforts have been recognised as credible and science-based. By taking this crucial step within our sector, we aim to be a catalyst for change within our industry. As our client companies also align their ambitions towards a net zero and resilient future, they are proud to partner with us for their technology-enabled and sustainable infrastructure solutions.
We're really pleased to have joined the Race to Zero. By being bold and taking that first leadership step, we really look forward to sharing our actions and what we're doing in order to achieve our goals. But it is about being bold, and I suppose that's what's slightly disappointing, that construction companies are still the least represented in Race to Zero. So I encourage others to take that step, be bold, because together we can make a difference.
We are in the race. Are you?
The race to resilience has been launched, that the race is on. And it has one simple and crucial goal, which is to catalyse the actions of non-state actors to build the resilience of 4 billion people from vulnerable groups and communities all around the world by 2030, so that we arrive at a place where we're not just surviving climate shocks and stresses, but thriving in spite of them. This is a campaign for all countries, and it's a sibling to our Race to Zero campaign, which we launched last June. And both races are needed to succeed to deliver a 1.5 degree resilient world. And to be in the race, you have to be part of an initiative that is taking actions to build a resilient future. And we're now inviting such initiatives to express their interest to join. Thank you, and please join the race today.
The UK has performed strongly to date in cutting emissions whilst growing the economy. We have decarbonised our economy and have been the fastest in the G20 to do so since 2000. Emissions have fallen 43% since 1990, and emissions per capita have halved in the same period. So what are the UK policies that are going to drive climate action? The UK's NDC, this is the nationally determined contribution, is to reduce gas emissions by at least 68% by 2030 compared to 1990. This target commits the UK to the fastest rate of emissions reduction of any economy. We want to lead by example. Prime Minister, and he has found his ambition for a green industrial revolution, an innovative and ambitious programme of job creation that will mobilise £12 billion of government investment to support up to 250,000 highly skilled green jobs in the UK, and to spur up to 3 times as much private sector investment. The Industrial Decarbonisation Strategy and Energy White Paper sets out the UK's vision for building a competitive, greener future for the manufacturing and construction sector, part of the government's path to net zero by 2050. Today's measures will create and support 80,000 UK jobs over the next 2 years, whilst cutting emissions by 2/3 in just 15 years. The Energy White Paper sets out specific steps the government is going to take to cut emissions from industry, from transport and buildings, the equivalent to taking 7.5 million petrol cars off the road permanently, while creating hundreds of thousands of new green jobs. The Prime Minister's 10-point plan and point 7 of the Prime Minister's 10-point plan is about greener buildings, improving energy efficiency, developing the UK heat pump manufacturing base, implementing future home standards, funding public sector decarbonisation, promoting consumer change. All of the what are the potential opportunities for construction in Venezuela? Construction has been one of the hardest hit sectors during this economic crisis. Under a recovery scenario, addressing infrastructure needs could unlock economic growth. There is also renewable energy potential, which could reduce the carbon footprint of buildings, together with improvements in energy efficiency. Collaboration between all national stakeholders can strengthen the design and delivery of domestic climate mitigation and adaptation plans, with a focus on building resilience of the most vulnerable regions. Enabling dialogue and cooperation with international partners facilitates knowledge, learning, and collective action through platforms such as Race to Zero and Race to Resilience. UK companies are engaged and are taking action. 30 of the UK FTSE 100 companies have signed up to the Race to Zero campaign. Nearly a third of the UK's largest businesses have pledged to eliminate their contribution to carbon emissions by 2050. Together, these firms, including AstraZeneca, BT Group, Sainsbury's, and Unilever, represent a total market capital of £650 billion. So what can we do? How can we connect Venezuela with UK expertise for green infrastructure? The Department for International Trade, represented here in the embassy, supports UK businesses to export and grow into global markets and to expand their technologies overseas. DIT is ready to help infrastructure companies around the world to connect with UK expertise in this sector. UK companies are ready to export products and services to support infrastructure in Latin America and the Caribbean. And to request UK products and expertise, DIT facilitates a free of charge connection through the online platform Export Opportunities. There is more information in the presentation. You can see an email there, commercial.caracas2, and they will be able to help. So I give the final word to Alok Sharma, our president for COP26. The way we rebuild our economies post-COVID-19 will have a profound impact on our planet. We have the opportunity to build back better, find a clean, resilient recovery that delivers for people and the planet. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Buckingham. We're going to be translating the questions that we have in the chat. Wait a moment.
Great, because I can't see the chat at all because I'm connecting by phone. So even if I was reading them in Spanish, I can't see them.
Okay, don't worry. I think so far we don't have any questions just,
Okay.
you know, many people interested in receiving the information in Spanish, which we'll be arranging with your team at the embassy. Okay. I don't know if, si alguien tiene una pregunta, por favor, y nos puede compartir por el chat, sería fantástico.
Okay, Beatriz, thank you, Mrs. Becks. And Beatriz, ya aquí tengo las preguntas. ¿Me escuchan?
Perfecto, gracias, José.
Okay, Mrs. Becks, if may I, first question. Regarding the financial support that is necessary for our country, of course, how can Venezuela apply for those funds? The Green Fund, the Climate Fund, the Fund for Adaptation, and so on, in your opinion and your experience?
Okay, so in terms of applying for funds, we have a limited fund here at the embassy where we often call for contributions in terms of projects, but there are also UN funds which people are able to access. I think Nolan will probably have more detail on those than me, and I would ask him that he can pass those on where possible. Through the embassy itself, we have quite a small budget, but there are other ways of accessing climate change. Nolan, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So the funds that have been mentioned are funds that are managed by the UN. So each of them have their own management process and their own application windows, which includes and are focused on developing countries, including Venezuela. We don't have direct information about the different processes, but we encourage you to look into each of these funds and to see what the requirements are and what the deadlines are as well. En español también puedo comentarles que esos fondos son administrados por Naciones Unidas, los que han mencionado en la pregunta. El Reino Unido no tiene digamos, influencia en la forma en la que esos fondos son administrados, sino que cada quien tiene sus procesos. Entonces, están enfocados en países en desarrollo, incluyendo Venezuela, por lo cual les invitaría a revisar las páginas de cada uno de los fondos para que se dé más información. Gracias.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your responses. There is another question from Moises Hernandez, a question and a comment. Are you still looking at 1.5 degrees increase with current emissions levels? We think we surpassed 2 degrees already. What's your opinion on that?
We need to get back down to 1.5 is my answer on that. 1.5 is absolutely where we should be. Any more than that is catastrophic for the planet. So all of the things that we should all be doing, both and the Prime Minister today, I think, or yesterday at UNGA, talked about the responsibility of the developed nations. And also China, I think, has already said at UNGA, I think their opening address, that they would also stop supporting coal-powered production. So all of these things should go to helping to reverse the situation as well as not make it worse.
Thank you. Thank you. Another question from Corina Ruano. How can the Race to Zero and Race to Resilience be encouraged in Venezuela?
So spread the word, I think is the answer. I know many of my diplomatic counterparts are doing something similar in spreading the word. Obviously, as the UK presidency of COP26, I have a particular responsibility. All of the webinars, all of the information available, the conversations that are taking place. I did a youth piece on climate a few days ago, and that's my answer. Spread the word, join, tell people, speak to your friends, speak to your colleagues, speak to anyone involved in these industries, tell them how important it is, speak to governments.
Thank you. I agree with that. And another question from Moises Hernandez. How we compromise or commit private sector to become sustainable within your experience in UK and in the experience of the UK embassy here in Venezuela? How can we commit the private sector to become more sustainable in their practices?
Well, I think the private sector recognize where money is to be made. And I think it's always really important to remember that the private sector is not a government, is not a charity, and ultimately they have shareholders and salaries and profit to make. And the future of that is in sustainable energy. It is not in oil and gas, it is not in coal power. The future of profit is in green. So the way I always work about this, and I know the big organizations I speak to are doing exactly the same with all their research, is what is going to make money as well as it being good for the planet. You can never just say to people, this is a better thing to do. It is better for people, it is better for the planet. People always need some additional motivation. So for me, the private is, well, if they need a little more help, then in the UK, certainly, we look at tax breaks for those that are doing incredible green initiatives. We look at grants for organizations that use more sustainable energy. And for those that don't, then they are taxed more heavily. And again, you tend to find private companies are very willing to look at better use of energy and more sustainable resources when money is involved. And I would say it's exactly the same here in Venezuela. And that is what we should be encouraging people to think about. Is not next year or next month, but long-term sustainability and therefore long-term profit making.
Excellent, thank you very much. Another question from Estefania Lamble. Which department can provide a detailed guidance in reference to import-export projects and or collaboration and in service providing together and with related to the sanctions to Venezuela?
So that would be the Department for International Trade. They are on this call. The contact details were very much in the presentation, and they will be delighted to be able to support any organisations that are looking to be put in touch with technical expertise in the UK or for import and export issues.
Thank you very much. From Jurani Lavado, in Venezuela, how do you think the Venezuelan talent in the infrastructure sector could learn more about the UK expertise in rebuildings and other innovations in the sector?
So again, I think it is really worth researching and speaking with the Department for International Trade, Caracas, to see what opportunities there are to exchange information and to learn in that space. I think it's really, really important all of things I share. So for me, I think talk to trade, see what the art of the possible is, because ultimately we are all here, we all need to work together. And you know, we are ready to help infrastructure companies in Venezuela to connect with UK expertise in this sector, and then and learn from that. But also for us to learn from Venezuelan companies. This is not all one way. I know there is some incredible innovation happening in Venezuela, but also, unlike the UK, you have a considerable amount more sunshine. And so I think there are other ways as well that we can learn.
I'm afraid that we have been losing a little bit the sound. There is a last question. Hay una última pregunta de la señora Pierangela Ferrer. Indica, hello there, is any of this information about the race to zero being delivered to universities in Latin America and here in Venezuela?
Well, certainly there are civil society and youth organizations where all of this information is being made available. Earlier this week, I think this week, may have been last week, I talked to a youth organization about climate, and there were a lot more information that was shared around Race to Zero, Race to Resilience. So the information is there, and there are many organizations in Venezuela that I know are really involved in pushing this forward, that recognize the importance. But I'm always happy to do more. I can always talk to more universities.
Great, thank you very much. Another last question, and it's the very last, from Moises Hernandez. How did you value the net zero carbon emissions housing plans for 2015 in the UK for the industry? It was quite a challenge at the time.
I mean, it's a huge challenge. All of those figures are basically brought together looking at what is best for the UK. With far more expertise than I have in this field, to decide what we need to do to make sure as a developed country we are contributing everything that we can contribute. But I can't give you the breakdown of exactly how that was reached.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think I have to thank again Mrs. Buckingham for this wonderful presentation and for helping us in the Consejo Venezolano de Construcción Sostenible to have you here encouraging people to do the right thing, as we really believe we have to. Muchísimas gracias a todos por su participación. Estamos ya cerrando el evento. Quiero invitarlos nuevamente para mañana jueves 23 a la misma hora en el mismo canal para la conferencia del día de mañana, que va a estar excelente también, como ha sido esta, fantástica, y les sirve el link de su registro previo, es el mismo que van a tener que utilizar para mañana. Estaremos pendientes la semana que viene de entregarles la información de todas estas presentaciones y seguramente parte del día de hoy con las traducciones de rigor. Muchísimas gracias a todos y bueno, hasta mañana jueves. Gracias, señora Buckingham, again. Los esperamos mañana en materiales sostenibles para edificios resilientes por parte de la arquitecto Mirali Marcano, fundadora de Soluciones Sostenibles, manager de soporte técnico HPT Collaborative. Gracias y feliz día. Buenas tardes.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Becks. It was an honor. Thank you, everyone. Gracias a todos.
Gracias.
Nos seguiremos viendo mañana. Cuídense mucho.
Gracias.
Hasta luego a todos. Que les vaya bien.